So I started trying to make money online at the age of 17. I worked as a virtual assistant for a professor in India, and then afterwards I became a writer. Then I started an agency, then I started a blog, then I went to flipping domains, and I did a lot of stuff until I finally made enough money to move away from that model of making money. And if I could go back and restart, here are 7 timeless lessons that I have learned so far that I will tell myself. So the first is that your income easily grows when you do. So there are generally many ways to make more money. Maybe just get multiple jobs, maybe work harder and for longer hours, or try to get higher paying clients. But what I've discovered is that the more I learned about business, different aspects of business and entrepreneurship, the more money I was able to make by applying those things that I was learning. So the more hard skills I learned, the more high value things I was able to sell, and the more money I was able to make. And as I learned more soft skills, it became easier to manage my workers, it became easier to work with clients, and this helps me get more referrals and ultimately gets repeat patronage, helping me make money also. The more business skills I learned, the better I was able to manage my business, the better I was able to productize my services, package and market the things that I was selling, the freelance writing services that I was selling. And again, the more money I was able to make. And so I realized that generally most of the limitations that I had were just skills that I was yet to learn, and these were usually soft skills and a few hard skills. And by learning and applying those skills, I was able to grow my income quite quickly. So the first lesson here is that if you focus on growing and developing yourself and learning more things and applying those things, you'd ultimately make more money. The second lesson is that starting is easy, but the beginning is hard. So I recently made up this quote, and what I love about it is that it emphasizes having a bias to action while recognizing the importance of effort and hard work. So starting is easy because in 2025, most of the things you need to start a business are actually readily available. I mean, for less than $50, you can get a domain, create a free website, get a payment processor, sign up for a cold emailing service, and start reaching out to clients. And voila, you already have an agency, right? But funny enough, I was able to run and grow my agency all the way up to 5K monthly back then in 2023. I was 23 years old, and all I had was a business PayPal account and a terrible landing page. So generally speaking, AI and tech advancements in general has made it easy to start businesses. The idea also ties into some of the lessons from the $1 Million Weekend by Noah Kagan, where he explains that it's easy to start a business and validate a business idea within a 48-hour window, so within a weekend. The nuance, however, is that even though starting is easy, the beginning itself can be hard, and that's because there are usually systems or perhaps a certain level of personal development and discipline that should be in place for us to achieve huge success or even see any traction. And so whenever I have a business idea or something that I want to do, I start quickly and then try to find out the skill gaps that I have. It's what Alex Hormozi calls ignorance debt. The skill gaps that I have, or the ignorance debt that I have, or the systems and people that need to be in place for me to get to the next level. The goal of starting quickly is to overcome the inertia or laziness or overthinking that comes with starting something new, because momentum is often built through action and not through overthinking. And so by taking the first step, I can identify real challenges instead of just guessing what might go wrong. And if you enjoyed this video so far, please hit the subscribe button to support the channel. So moving on to the third lesson. The third lesson that I've learned is the importance of learning about human nature. Essentially, learning human nature in general is a superpower, and it has been life-changing for me because in many ways it has made my life easier and generally improved my understanding of relationships, human psychology and behavior. Basically, how people reason and how people make decisions, right? It's also helped me navigate things like client negotiations. It helps me manage client expectations and helps me communicate more effectively. So understanding what truly makes people act the way they do, understanding what truly motivates people, understanding how certain people respond to different approaches of communication or collaboration really just makes your life easier as someone who's trying to make money online. And so whether in business or personal relationship, learning human nature gives you an edge, and you can then start to see patterns in behavior or even predict people's reactions. And by doing so, you can influence the outcomes of certain things effortlessly. So in freelancing, this could mean crafting proposals that speak directly to what the clients care about based on the job description. In business, it can mean running better marketing campaigns because you understand what people respond to. And in relationships, it also makes it easier to just generally avoid, navigate, or predict conflicts. Also predicts people in general sometimes. And the go-to books for this would be 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene and also Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. Those are my favorite books on human nature. So the fourth lesson is that most skills can be learned over the weekend. Now this lesson is a little bit controversial, but it's particularly true for digital skills because people often assume that learning a new skill takes months or even years. But in reality, many of the things we want to learn, things like running Google Ads, things like email marketing, things like basic coding, many of these things can be learned to a functional level in just a few days of focused effort. I remember I watched an interview of Alex Hormozi where he explained that he learned how to run Facebook ads over a single weekend. He did a workshop during the weekend, and after that he was able to successfully run and manage profitable campaigns that then blew up his business. And so whenever I want to learn something, I give it focused effort within a 48-hour window. For example, when I wanted to start a blog, I spent one weekend learning web design. I was able to buy a domain, build a website. It was terrible, but I built it. And in one weekend, I was able to get to a functional level in web design. I wasn't great, but I was okay. And so generally, right, whenever I want to learn something, I just give it a weekend because one weekend of intensive study and application is really all that we need to hasten the process of learning and get to a stage of functional competence faster than we think. The fifth lesson is the power of positioning. So someone told me something when I started freelancing and it changed my life. He said, clients don't just pay for your skills, they pay for perception. So how you present yourself, your experience, and your offer will determine your earning potential. So one thing I learned early on, positioning myself as an expert, as an authority in my niche, and that drastically increased my value. And one of the ways to do this rightly is to avoid being a generalist. Now, generalists tend to struggle on freelancing platforms, and I think in life generally. And that's because specialists or people who specialize in solving specific problems for specific clients usually command higher pay and just generally attract better clients. But the key though is to ensure that you specialize in a field that is broad enough to allow you to pivot, especially early on. For example, when I started writing, right? So, okay, let's say you're starting to write or you're starting marketing. Instead of branding yourself as a marketing consultant, you could brand yourself as a marketing consultant for finance companies or for banks. Like when I started writing as a writer, I branded myself as a financial content writer. And then after that, I became a Forex writer. And then I moved to being a crypto writer. And then I moved to writing for crypto startups. And then I moved to financial service firms in general. And so choosing a niche that helps me pivot was very pivotal to me surviving the trends in the finance industry. So it's good to pick a niche, but just ensure that within your niche there is a bit of flexibility. The sixth lesson is that life generally gets better as you get older. Life doesn't automatically get better as you get older. It gets better when you consistently take actions that give you more flexibility, more freedom, and more opportunities down the road. So it gets better when you take sacrifices that open up more doors in the future. Over time, I've realized that many of the fears and anxieties that I had when I was younger were unnecessary. And the closer I got to making certain critical life decisions, the clearer things became. Not because the choices were easier, but because I had more experience and information to make better decisions. And so generally, when it comes to decision making, for example, when I started learning digital skills, I didn't always know which one would be the most viable one long term. But instead of getting stuck in analysis paralysis, I focused on skills that would give me multiple options in the future. So I learned copywriting, and then I learned a bit of marketing and then content creation. And that gave me the ability to pivot between freelancing and building my own business and then starting my own blog and now creating a YouTube channel. And if I had locked myself into a single narrow career path too soon, I might have felt stuck later on. But by choosing options that kept my future open, I was able to give myself more flexibility and I was able to adapt as I gained more clarity in life. And so most of the stress we have about the future comes from trying to make the perfect decisions too early. But instead of trying to predict everything, it's always better to focus on choices that would expand future possibilities, because life naturally gets easier when you have more experience in life, when you have better information, and then you have more paths to choose from. And that's why I believe that life gets better as you get older. And that's the 6th lesson. So the 7th and final lesson that I learned is to have the freaking audacity. I recently came across the realization that so far in my early 20s, I've actually held myself back from doing so many things. And it's mostly because of fear, really, and the feeling that I needed some kind of permission. I needed more experience. I needed a second degree, in fact, before going after big opportunities. But the truth that I realized is that most people who win aren't always the smartest people. They're not always the most skilled people. They're often just the ones that have the audacity to try. And so when I started freelancing, I priced myself based on what I thought I was worth and not necessarily what the market would actually pay. And then a few weeks after I got my first job, I saw other people charging 5 to 10 times more for the same gigs that I was doing. And the only difference was the confidence they had to ask the clients to pay such an amount of money. So that day, right, I decided to raise my rates. And subsequently in life, I've learned to have the freaking audacity to apply for things, to go for opportunities. Many times, the difference between a breakthrough and staying stuck is simply sending the email, making the call, pitching your idea to a potential mentor or an investor. And the worst that can happen really is that people would say no, or they would ignore you. But the best that can happen is that you come across a life-changing opportunity. And trust me, that happened to me on Upwork. And so I've learned that most of the limits that we put on ourselves are self-imposed. And to make more money in life, to move faster in life, there needs to be a lot of boldness. We need to have the audacity to do what other people may not be able to do, to take more risks, to go after things that we want, things that we think are out of reach. And it has been surprising how often people actually say yes. With that said, we've come to the end of this video. And if you found it helpful, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.